Hey everyone, and welcome to my talk about pulling on the string. It's been a while since I actually did a talk in English, so try to bear with me. I'm not sure I'll be able to find all the right words or even to be able to describe all the right things. Now, this is a talk I've been both dreading and anticipating for a really long time, mainly because, yeah, I'm going to go through some stuff that may or may not have happened between the years of 2010 and 2015. If some of you are on the call, or some of you are following along and worked with me between those years, and there seems to be some coincidence or something that seems that it might be close to reality, that's purely fictional and purely coincidence. I will state that again, my opinions are my own. All examples are purely fictional, and any resemblance to reality is purely coincidental. Now, who am I then? I am Benjamin Särkkä. I am the CEO of Den100, which is a small strategic company that does a lot of cool stuff. Among other things, we arrange trainings and help with strategic consultancy. I'm also the founder of Disobey, which is the largest hacking conference in the Nordics. I'm insanely proud about how far we've come with it, and I'm also a tiny bit sad that we didn't managed to arrange one this year, but obviously because of the whole pandemic thing, that did not happen. Additionally, I am the director of cybersecurity for a company called Virja Security. For now, we're in the midst of changing our name. We're going to be called Loihde during, in a couple of months, I suppose, or some subset of the Loihde brand. There's my socials if you want to follow me, or if you want to contact me afterwards. I'll also be hanging around on the Discord, and may or may not join the after party. I'm not sure if I'll be able to yet. Anyway, so let's start at the beginning, right? Like all good stories, I was a junior incident responder and a, quite junior security person at this time. And whether or not this was a company I worked for or a company that had hired me out is besides the point. What is not besides the point that this was around 10 years ago, when security was important. Some players understood that security was a major thing, but others did not take it as seriously. There was a team of around 20-ish people that I worked with daily, and we were tasked with both understanding the defensive posture of a organization, as well as understanding the potential risks from an offensive point of view. Since this was Finland, having offensive checkpoints and what have you wasn't that big of a that big of a part of our everyday lives. And threat hunting wasn't something that was regularly done. However, it was something I had recently learned about, and I was really eager to try out my new skills in the environment against whatever information we had lying around. Now, the cool thing with this company was that we were encouraged by the supervisor at the time to try out new things, be creative, and actively work towards the betterment of the organization, or of the setup of the security posture of the organization. And being a junior, I was really excited to show off my skills. I was ambitious and driven to start making a name for myself, and showing that I knew what I was doing beyond getting employed. So I was in the midst of one of these threat hunting exercises, utilizing a tooling which, well, basically was just doing grep search or using grep against logs, like a larger subset of logs, and trying to find interesting things, trying to find uniqueness, if you will, trying to find indicators of compromise. And I stumbled upon something that was quite interesting. I stumbled upon a string that appeared at first glance to be gibberish, but with more thought into it and with more investigation into it, I started seeing the same string appear multiple times at periodic with periodic timestamps. So it appeared to be doing something, and it appeared to be doing something periodically. Now, in this company, there was a large-ish technical debt. There was a largest setup of legacy systems, and I couldn't be sure. Is this actually an indicator of compromise or a false positive? So I continued digging. I started looking at whatever could this mean, wherever could this be calling, and I started looking for when this had first appeared, like when was the earliest indication of said string. Now, that led to an interesting problem. At the time, the log retention time was 6 months for the organization, and for the duration of those 6 months, there was nothing, or there was not a single instance where this piece of IOC, where this string was not visible in our logs. And my first instinct was, holy shit, this has been here forever. This is normal. This is a false positive. I should probably not continue investigating this. However, at this point, I was so intrigued and so well into this train of thought, if you will. Those of you who've ever worked with me or know me even a tiny bit know that I might get ridiculously excited and interested about stupid things, and then I just delve all my time and energy into that thing thing of interest, and this was one of those things. And at the end of it, I decided to consult with a older, more senior, wiser member of the team, and they quite wisely freaked out. They immediately realized this was weird and asked all the right questions. When was this last observed? How did we get to this point? What are we going to do now? And what should our containment measures be? If I'm sounding vague, it's because there is a very, very real reason for it. So our conclusion was, oh my God, it's hackers. They're all the way on our internet, all the way into the heart of the organization. That this isn't a small scale thing. This is a holy shit moment for us. We go, fuck. We are quite convinced now that we have been compromised, and for whatever reason, we decide to escalate and bring in more people, bring in and start presenting our findings to higher ups. Now, at that time, involving higher ups in any sort of decision-making process regarding security essentially meant shut it all down and rebuild. Like, those were the business continuity measures that they were doing. That was it. Like, bam, close it all down. Us, however, having had some training in forensics and having some understanding about the evidence collection procedures that are needed, having some understanding about if we ever want to do something with this information, we need to get proper images, proper memory dumps. We need to start looking at this in more detail, and we did. So we started increasing our accuracy so that we could remove as much uncertainty as humanly possible. We started looking at this in the greater context. We started looking at what all of this could mean. We started looking at whether or not the IP address that this string beaconed back to, or this connection was beaconing back to, could be found out about. And we did find some things, and I'm gonna get back to that. But at this point in my story, I feel like we need to take a step back and come back to reality, or to where we are now. Having been or having gone through the pandemic, like all of you, or being in the midst of the pandemic, like all of you, we are somewhere on the road to recovery. And there's been a lot of changes in the world during this past year and a half or so, where we are increasingly seeing new ways of working being stabilized as the new normal, or the way forward as well. I don't think we will ever go back to the way it was, or the way it were. And by saying that, I mean we need to look at how this has affected security as well. We need to look at where we are in terms of what the changes have been done, and having an increase in accuracy to remove uncertainty is one of those ways of better understanding where we are now. And by that I mean any sort of measurement, any sort of metrics will give us a better understanding of reality as it pertains to whatever situation we're in. So I looked at the information that is available to us, and one of the main sources for good metrics, good quality data, for me has always been the Verizon data breach investigation report. And I'm sure a lot of you have led or read the 2021 version. It's been out for a while. But I figured I'd summarize some of the findings, some of the changes that we have observed, some of the ways where the world is going, or how these types of breaches, or how the type of breaches that this story is about might have happened to other companies as well. And if we look at this graph, or these two graphs, I think we have two very clear trends, two very clear observations that we can make. The first one is that with a almost double the number of incidents to web application attacks, we're seeing denial of service attacks being utilized, or at least being labeled or categorized as incidents. And this, to me, has been reality for quite a while. But I think it's an interesting metric. It's an interesting way of observing, or of like understanding how the threat landscape is, or what the threat landscape looks like. Most of the incidents that companies are observing are related to denial of service attacks, or at least almost 50%. Now that's a lot. Like 1 in 2 of your incidents is a denial of service attack. Now, if we go back to my story and we relate to the beginning of the 10s, then denial of service attacks were maybe not as common, but were a lot more devastating than they are today. Most denial of service attacks can be mitigated in this day and age. The other interesting aspect of these two graphs is that social engineering is the largest indicator or the largest single category for breaches, which I think makes sense. The level of understanding, the level of knowledge we have about security is leaps and bounds beyond what it was 10 years ago. We're at a level where most low-hanging fruit are able to be blocked. We're at a level where most companies are taking security seriously enough to have the easiest ways at least blocked, where externally facing systems are no longer left to rot, at least for the majority of the systems. Obviously, the second largest thing on both is basic web application attacks, but still. So web social engineering is the majority of the things that are impacting and attacking companies. And of those breaches, of those incidents that we're seeing in companies, of those situations where there are clear losses to the companies that are impacted, 85% of them involve some human element. Now, that essentially means that we're in a position where we need to get a lot better at training and educating humans, where we need to have a better understanding and a better grasp on what's driving humans to do the mistakes that they're doing, because 61% of the breaches actually involve credentials. Now, whether or not that's credential reuse or credentials stolen through phishing is not clear through this graph, but the reality is the same. The attackers are using or reusing valid credentials to breach these systems. Now, some of this could be mitigated with two-factor authentication or some sort of FIDO authentication setups, which, to be fair, there's no reason not to do anymore. Like everybody has a smartphone in their pockets. Everybody is able to roll onto one of these free authenticator setups, even if it's like Google's authenticators or Microsoft authenticators for like one-time passwords. You could even use like hardware keys or whatever to like greatly increase the security in the organization. So if we look at these two graphs together, if we look at social engineering and basic web application attacks as being the majority of everything that is impacting the systems, and we understand that 85% of these include humans, and 61% of that is credential reuse, then it's really clear where we need to invest, where we need to push the narrative. Like, what do we need to stop from happening? I'm not saying we should stop looking at the technical aspects. I'm not saying that we should stop looking at security testing as like controls. I'm not saying that we should stop actually doing anything of what we're doing now. I'm just saying that we should focus our efforts, so focus our investments on both training the population or our employees, our users, but also building compensating controls for credential reuse. So that this doesn't allow for the numbers that you see on the right side. So we're not in a situation where the average losses for breaches are like, well, astronomical essentially in this day and age. Now, there's something else that I find interesting and something that is uniquely, or at least appears to be quite heavily biased towards the trends that we have now, where we are observing and looking at what the world is doing. And that's, of course, ransomware. And right now, there's a new ransomware hitting, or a new compromise that's hitting the news cycle. But I want to talk about the Colonial Shutdown, because frankly, I think it's an really interesting case for what drives companies to actually pay ransom to the ransomware groups. Now, in Colonial's case, it's because they couldn't figure out how to build their systems if they left the pipeline open. So this was purely a business decision. They couldn't figure out billing in the case of their ransomware setup. So we have an attacker that is driven by greed, I suppose, driven by money, launching a ransomware attack against what appears to be an unpatched exchange system, which takes over the billing system of an oil pipeline company, shuts down the billing operations for said company. It has nothing to do with the ability for the company to actually provide this basic necessity for the entire organization. It has only to do with their ability to make money. So the ransomware gang is attacking their ability to make money. Whether or not DarkSide did this intentionally or not is up for debate, but I think there's some level of irony here, and that led to the company shutting down their pipeline, which in turn led to people putting gasoline in plastic bags. So we have a ransomware gang operating in the digital space, operating in cyberspace, if you will. And their greed led to a shutdown in operations because of the greed of the pipeline company, which led to a Consumer Product and Safety Commission warning against not to fill plastic bags with gasoline. There was another picture of somebody guarding with what appeared to be an assault rifle, somebody else pumping gas. And this I think is a perfect example of how real the impact is of ransomware, how real the impact is of cybercrime, where the bad guys cause havoc on a systematic level for an entire nation. Now, whether or not that's entirely true is again up for debate. I don't have the visibility into the US as some of the talkers later today will, and they'll be able to correct me if I'm wrong. But at least from our perspective, from our sheltered cold north, if you will, observing all of this madness going on gives us a glimpse at how bad it could get over here. Now, consider for a moment that a similar type of ransomware attacks some of our critical infrastructure. Now, heating would be the obvious choice, right? Energy would be another one that would cause like mass panic and a lot of people fleeing to the countryside to where they can at least stay warm with wood. and burning stuff in the fireplace. But we're no longer living in a world where these things are separate, and we haven't been for some time. Now, there's this saying in Finland about remembering the year 1995. And the reality of it is that 2045 is closer to us now than 1995. And even looking back at where we were in 2010 is a long ways away from where we are today. Now, last graph before we get back to our regularly scheduled programming, COVID has changed the type of activities that the attackers are doing. They have actively moved to increase their phishing, increase ransomware activities, and decrease their attacks on misconfigurations or publishing error systems. There is a small increase on stolen credentials, which doesn't really make sense to me since phishing is that much larger than it was before. But I think this reflects the news cycle. I think this reflects what we've been seeing for the last year. Like, there's been a new leak almost every week. There's been a new ransomware case, if not every week, every other week. And there's been huge credential dumps and sale of a really big amount of different data sets on different systems. Now, whether or not this will continue after COVID is again up for debate. I don't know. I hope that we get better at it, and I hope people aren't as gullible anymore. But this is at least Verizon's take on where the world is or was, and maybe there's something we can understand from it. So one of the things we might understand from it, and one of the things that I find so intriguing about all of this is I think we're starting to see the peak or the top of the iceberg in terms of cascading compromises. Like, there was this highly publicized SolarWinds compromise a while back. And I think we're going to start seeing more of that. I think we're going to start seeing situations where an upstream provider is going to be compromised, and all of that provider's customers and clientele base will be compromised, as well as those customers. So we're going to see these cascading faults, problems, errors, just going over completely crippling larger organizations, maybe even smaller nations, or maybe even larger nations, to the point where the barrier between the physical and the digital in terms of our safety, not only our security, but our safety, will start to come into question. And if we think about it, all signs point towards this already being the case. But the larger failures or the larger disasters that are just waiting to happen are just beyond the horizon, or just behind the next corner, I think. I can imagine a situation where something like a widely used open source library is compromised or is actively contributed to, and then there's a change where they introduce something malicious to it, and that it then gets implemented in a lot of other projects because they're just blindly utilizing whatever code they're getting from what appears to be a reputable source. Now, I say I can imagine. I don't really have to imagine. This has been shown to happen before. This has been shown to be the reality today. But maybe if I use my imagination, if I think about what a potential outcome of this is, then maybe there's a next SolarWinds behind the horizon with a larger or a global reach, something like an operating system provider or a network device provider. Maybe somebody like the Nokia networks or Cisco, where we actually start seeing problems on hardware level that then replicate into the entire thing or the entire system, like systematic failure, systematic issues. Now we're getting back, and I got a bit sidetracked, to be honest, but I figured this made sense in the middle of my story, because contrasting all of that to where we were somewhere back in 2010-ish, we're looking at this thing, this string, this connection, this beacon that is actively contacting somewhere outside of our organization, where we're investigating, we're looking at it, we're intrigued, we're in the zone, so to speak. We're trying to keep our heads cool, and we're trying to keep the angry men who are screaming into phones from causing widespread panic within the organization. And on some level we succeed. We managed to tell them to give us a few more days before they do anything drastic. Now, well, actually, we got 1 day. We asked for a week, and I think they were really the attackers were not anticipating or not expecting us to do the threat hunting, to do like log analysis, to do these like new types of behaviors, or at the time to us new types of behaviors. I mean, maybe this is like old news to all of you, but it wasn't to me back then. And we were excited, and we were telling the higher ups about how we have now isolated the systems, how we made sure that we know that there's nobody or there's nothing that we aren't aware of. They haven't done anything. They appear to have just set up this control channel. They're not actively utilizing it. There's just this like beaconing home of it. And the funny thing is, nobody at any point asked about the attackers. They were interested in the systems. They were interested in what the potential impact is, and like attribution wasn't on the table at any point. However, we really wanted to know what was going on, and managed to trace this back to a university network in well, let's say Asia, so it doesn't pinpoint it too clearly. And doing more research, we found a published master's thesis about how to use pivoting techniques, well, not pivoting techniques, how to use like certain types of techniques to gain access to a Nordic institution. Published on this university website by these students. This was a setup where they were explaining how weaknesses in certain web applications are able to be utilized to upload code, which will then beacon home. And they had done this to a number of organizations, and our organization was one of these organizations. Now, the amount of laughter I had with the team about this when we figured this out is probably not appropriate considering the gravity of the situation. But at the same time, the relief we felt when we found our address space and we found our organization's interest in this master thesis was quite large, because this wasn't a sophisticated nation state, or at least it didn't appear to be that. This wasn't a malicious type of compromise. This was purely for educational reasons from a country where, or a university where, I suppose ethics are considered a bit differently in these types of things. Now, having said that, and tying this somewhat together, not all together, but somewhat together, having a education facility impose learning on this organization was quite interesting. And the things the organization learned were not necessarily the things we would have hoped the organization learned. They were the thing the organization learned was that they need to hire more security people, which I mean, that was a good call. They need to introduce larger log retention times, and they need to have active counter measures against the identified issues. Again, I really wish, or I really wish I was braver and could talk in more specifics. But my imagination isn't good enough to think of all the details. The thing I think we should have learned is that from the get-go, all assumptions, everything we have, everything we think about in terms of what an attacker might be and what they might be out for is completely different from what the reality is. And I think we should drop our assumptions and start looking at facts, and start looking at the information and the metrics that are available to us. Start understanding that there's a lot of stuff, a lot of things, a lot of undefined reality that needs to be defined and needs to be better understood. And we need to start teaching. We need to start explaining and expressing and taking home all the learnings that we have and contextualizing that for our audience, for the people who are willing to listen to us explain, who are willing to learn from us. And I think a lot of us are forgetting that things that we find as trivial, things we find as obvious, aren't that to most people. Most people in this community are leaps and bounds beyond the average person in terms of understanding the threats. Most people in this community know a lot more than they think they do. Most of you, I'm willing to wager, all of you know something that I don't know. And you can teach me a lot of stuff, but you can teach everybody else a lot of things as well. And we should be proud of our knowledge, and we should stand on the shoulders of our teachers and our educators, and proudly proclaim the knowledge that we have to make sure that the people that are coming after us will have it easier, that we don't end up in a situation where we make it harder for people that need help, because we don't have to, and we really shouldn't. That's my thing, my presentation. I hope it made some sense to some of you, and I'm I'm interested in whether or not you have any questions for me.
Okay, thank you, Benjamin. Indeed, we have some questions here, and I'll just shoot them right out. So what's your take on Biden's executive order to the Colonial Pipeline ransomware attack, such as the mandate for software bill of materials?
Wow, like you want me to go into geopolitics. I am not a geopolitic expert. I don't feel qualified in commenting on Biden's executive orders. What I will say, however, is that there is a very real wake-up that is happening in terms of this. And I think ransomware has done more to raise awareness for information security and cybersecurity than any information security specialist has done overall. It's been the best awareness program that has happened in a number of years, multitude of years. And the fact that we have the president of the United States actually making executive orders on cybersecurity because of ransomware is a testament of that fact.
Okay, so the next one would be, what would you say are the top 3 challenges when it comes to preventing data leaks and breaches?
Top 3 challenges. Credential reuse is probably the largest one, using the same username and password on a lot of different services. So then that would imply that awareness about credential reuse would be the top challenge. Number 2 is probably executive buy-in in terms of security. A lot of executives are saying that they take this seriously, but then when they are forced to spend money, they stop taking it seriously, which actually means that they don't really, or that you don't really have executive buy-in. And I think that leads to the number 3 reason, which is that cybersecurity specialists are historically terrible at contextualizing what the risks are for the organization on an organizational level. We tend to immediately dive into technical details and technical aspects of whatever the issue is, which immediately stops most executives from listening. We need to start learning and start working on contextualizing threats and contextualizing risks in terms of business losses, and actually put numbers to it, and have some sort of confidence intervals in terms of explaining what those things are.
Okay, I have one more question for you, which is, will the electric grid be taken down by a targeted attack or by mistake as a collateral damage?
Yes. yes. I'm pretty sure it'll happen, and it already has. If you look at the Black Energy campaign that hit Ukraine, then I think it's very clear that when we are in an active military conflict, nation states will attack the like critical infrastructure of a nation, and in the case of the Black Energy setup, I think there was like hundreds of thousands of people who were without power for a longer duration of time.
Okay, we got one more question, if it's okay for you. So, can InfoSec professionals really stay out of the geopolitics?
No, absolutely not, and not stay out of politics either, and not stay out of ethics. We have a responsibility as people who are both in positions of influence and power, but also in positions of actually developing tooling and software, to make sure that we have a clear moral compass that we follow, and don't continue doing things that we don't feel is right or is ethical. Having said that, not everyone has the choice to not just stop working, not just and I think we should make it our utmost priority to give opportunities to people who need to get out of a situation where they are stuck and need to do things that is against their own conscience because of them not having any other option. We are ridiculously privileged in so many different ways, and if we stop thinking about how easy it is for us and have empathy for people who are in a significantly harder position, then we will realize that we don't really have the moral high ground to tell other people how they should be doing their thing or how they should be living, and we need to support people who with the decisions they're doing, and support our community with with the ability to move away from unethical practices.
Okay, thank you for the questions, and I think we can now have a short of the answers and questions, and I'm hoping we could have the next short break, and then we can continue with the next talk. Thank you, Benjamin.
Thanks for having me. This has been amazing, and I hope I will hear from you, and I really miss all you guys. Really love you guys a lot. So I hope I'll see you soon. Bye.